So during my TBB journey, I ran a marathon. But while we did run a physical marathon, TBB itself was a marathon of its own, and it paralleled my journey in a lot of ways. But no marathon begins without training, and in just the same way, my TBB journey started long before the starting line. So let me give you a little background. As a young boy, I was very adventurous and inquisitive. I was what you might refer to as a nerd. But as is as is common, I was a bit outcast because of my apparent inability to be cool. And so for years, I was never really accepted for being who I was, and as a result, I eventually tried to fit in. And just as some days I didn't want to wake up to practice for the marathon, there were days that I hated waking up to practice being someone I wasn't. And I came to resent having to fake it. I hated having to be someone I wasn't so that others would like me. Now, eventually, I did find friends that accepted me for who I was, and those were what we lovingly refer to as band nerds. Um, and although I fit in with them, I still felt incomplete. I wanted the average person or general public to like me, to accept me for who I was. And despite hating the very idea of it, I unconsciously began to change how I acted so others would accept me. And so as I joined TBB, I developed this great plan. If I could become close friends with the other students on the program, then I would know I had done it. I had become friends with what I considered to be the general public. And so we started our journey in Guatemala, and very quickly I learned my first lesson. I found out that I just didn't have the patience or capacity to deal with Max, bless his heart. Max was a high energy student that left us at the end of Guatemala. But the problem wasn't him, it was me. I saw a lot of traits in him that resembled traits that I hated about myself. And unfortunately, I learned this after Max had returned home. So I was never able to have the friendship I wanted to have with him. But by eventually learning to love Max for who he was, I learned to love and forgive myself. And during the marathon, I was really struggling to love myself for committing to such a painful experience. And speaking of the marathon, I had a really weak base going into it. My shoes were terrible. And similarly, I had a weak base going into TBB. And my base was weak in terms of my maternal relationships. I started to learn to love my parents on the program and specifically my mom. But it was thanks to Max that I was able to do this. I needed to learn to love myself before I could exert love for anyone else. And so during the first few weeks, I called home and for the first time ever, I said I love you to my parents. And I'm ashamed to say they were visibly shocked. They thought I wasn't capable of saying that. And after the call, I cried for a while. And later in Thailand, after I had lost my maternal grandmother, which crushed me, I cried harder than ever, but I cried into the arms of a loving friend. So I just want to say thank you, Ethan. Ethan showed me that love is possible. I was struggling with the idea that although I could be liked, I could never be loved, never be wanted or cared for. And Ethan proved this idea wrong, but at the time I didn't trust his sincerity because of some of my past experiences. And so Ethan also taught me through persistent love that I should give trust first because otherwise I would risk pushing away good people. And during the marathon, I was surrounded by strangers, and but some of them saw me and called out encouragements, despite the fact that they were running the same marathon as me. And these strange acts of kindness pushed me to finish the marathon when I honestly did not want to. And in just the same way, Ethan's acts of kindness helped me to finish the marathon that is TBB. And speaking of TBB, we also had a seminar where we took what's called the Enneagram Personality Test. Now, in this test, you answer a bunch of questions regarding who you are, and it gives you a result in 9 different categories. My results told me that although I scored highly in all categories, that I'm a peacemaker. And that means that I'm the easygoing and unassuming type, and that I'm usually receptive and reassuring, but can be agreeable and complacent. And at the time, I thought, wow, it nailed it. I mean, one of the traits of being a peacemaker is that he or she has high scores in all categories. And I did. But after 4 or 5 months, I came to realize that I'm not naturally a peacemaker. I scored the way I did because I wanted to fit what others wanted from me. I wanted to be a peacemaker. Now, this revelation happened in Ghana, and I was pretty devastated. I had regressed to the very thing I hated, a fraud. I adapted to fit what others wanted to see and forgot my real identity. It felt like I had failed my whole mission of TBB. I hadn't shown the real me, and it seemed like the me I tried to present wasn't even accepted. And so I gradually dropped the curtain and waited for everyone to just abandon me. But as I realized during confessions night, I'm not always the most observant. And when it seemed like my friendships hadn't ended in a fiery explosion, I decided to open my eyes to see what was really happening. And I realized that I actually was accepted, at least by those that matter. And so on that last night together in Virginia, I took a leap into the darkness and laid myself bare before those I care about. I expressed all my feelings and let my truest form shine. And much to my surprise, relief, and comfort, the next day, as I cried at the end of my TBB marathon, I was still held close to those I'm lucky enough to call my friends. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo.
Oh, Dylan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, what questions do we have for Dylan? Lots of clapping.
Hey.
Yay. What will you take with you moving forward as you build new relationships in college?
I think just more intentional vulnerability and not the controlled sense of vulnerability that I've always exhibited throughout the program, but really opening up and letting myself be vulnerable. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do most going into college.
Thank you. How have your beliefs about yourself changed over the last 7 months?
Oof. There's a lot, and it's hard to put into words. I have always believed that I'm a very accepting individual, and always open to others. And something I realized during TBB is that I am limited in a lot of ways because of just having kind of a limited background in terms of experience with people who are different from me. And so just learning to be around those people and really accept them for who they are, I think has been one of the biggest changes I've seen.
Great. Thank you so much, Dylan. Any other questions for Dylan? Being a 9 is a blessing and a curse.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you have a lot of peacemakers in this room with you.
Wow, cool.
Wonderful. All right. And no final questions for Dylan? All right. Well, thank you so much, Dylan.
Thank you.